And we are live. This Hangout on Air is live on Monday, July 27th, 2015. I'm Ron Motter, the host of Planeta.com and the catalyst behind the Planeta Wiki, of which we have some participants here. And we're having our informal Monday Hangout, talking about recent events, upcoming events, and kind of just getting a global scope of what's happening around the world. So I want to thank everybody. We have Siobhan in Ireland, Martin in South Africa, and Chris in England/Greece. So welcome to you all. Siobhan, let's start with you, Siobhan, and can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work?
Hi, I work for, well, I'm based in Ireland in West Cork on the southwest coast of Ireland, and I represent a tourism cooperative for 100 small businesses there. We call the Sheep's Head and Bantry Tourism Cooperative. We've been doing quite innovative work for the last 2 years, bringing together accommodation businesses, food businesses, activity providers, and just trying to develop a way of presenting our area that we feel reflects what we love about it and what we want to share with visitors. And it's been working really well, and it's been an award-winning body of work that we've put out there. But what's interesting is the way that it's brought the community together, and that's working really well. As a business community, I think we feel like we're working more efficiently. So yeah, I think we've got lots that we can share with other people in other places who are trying to build up that kind of responsible tourism community.
Perfect. Hey, one last question. What time is it there for you right now?
It is 20 to 5 in the evening.
Okay. Yeah. Martin, can you introduce yourself?
I'll have to unmute myself first. I am Martin Hatchwell. I'm what am I? A ball of a head cold at the moment. I own this website, Cape Coastal Route, which is a route site for the area between Cape Town and Port Elizabeth in South Africa, on the southern tip of the African continent. Two cities about 800 kilometers apart. So I've got attractions and activities from that area, slowly building it up, and the idea being that these are all businesses that support responsible travel. I also am a tourism consultant, and I've got this website, thistourismweek.co, where I comment on issues affecting travel, mostly to the inbound to South Africa, but also quite a lot about the questions of responsible travel, which is what we're talking about tonight. And I tweet at both Martin Hatchwell and at This Tourism Week.
Thank you. Chris?
Hi, yes, I have been on this Hangout a couple of times now. So for those of you who know me, hello. For those of you who don't, I'm a consultant. I have a law background, but for the last few years I've been focusing on tourism, sustainable tourism, and ecotourism. I've been working on a few European funded projects, and the latest thing that I've been involved with is the Greek Ecotourism Society. I'm based in Greece and in the UK, and I'm also a linguist, so I do the odd translation as well.
Fantastic. Does anyone want to share a screen or show us what you're working on, or give us...
I could do that. I've been wanting to do this for a few weeks. I finally managed to have something to show you. Let me just load this up and hope that the dog doesn't start barking. Please, don't do this now. Come on. If it's not technical difficulties, it's animal difficulties. Right.
That's all good.
Okay. Screen share. She approves.
Beautiful.
Okay. So, Here we go.
Oh,
Can you
nice.
see this? This is a sneak preview of the Greek Ecotourism Society's website that went online about a week and a half ago. It's still in the development stage, and it needs a few tweaks, but you can see here a little bit about the society and our goals, the mission, the board members. See, I'm
Hey,
down here.
wait a second. Tell us who are your board members.
The board members, the president of the new society is Fuli Papageorgiou, who is the managing director of Prisma Center for Development Studies, which is a consultancy based in Athens. The vice president is a friend of mine called Frangiskos Karalas, who hopefully will be joining us in a hangout in the next couple of weeks. He wanted to join 2 weeks ago, but unfortunately wasn't able to. He is the owner and founder of Ephemelia, which I could show you as well very briefly. Can you still see this?
Yeah.
Can you see Google now? Can you see this website popping up?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Ephemelia, which is, here's Frangiskos on the left. It's an organic agritourism farm and guest house in Laconia in the Peloponnese part of the mainland in Greece. It's a great little project. I thoroughly recommend taking a look at that. The General Secretary is Kostas Teneketsis, who is a consultant and expert who has been working with sea turtles in Greece for many years. He's currently working on a project in the Peloponnese as well. On the west coast of the Peloponnese, there is one of the most important turtle nesting sites in Europe. In fact, not many people will know about that, and I can add information later on the Google Hangout page. He's currently counting turtles and working on a project that's being funded by a hotel. The treasurer is Marina Papathanassiou, who is the owner of another guest house in Greece. I'll just load it up now. Here we go. Called Elionas, which is in Evies, which is an island just north of Athens. It's actually the second largest Greek island. Not many people will know about it though, because most people will go to the Cyclades, Dodecanese, famous islands Santorini, Milos, Paros, Naxos. But Evies is actually a beautiful island with many amazing mountains, olive groves, beautiful coastlines, and this is a nice hotel as well, run by Marina. And the final member of this new initiative, this society, is Agelas Davoudi, who is the owner of a mountain activity website, also in the Peloponnese. And that, can you see that?
See it perfectly.
Yeah, and they offer, as we can see here, bike tours, hiking tours. We've got quite a busy schedule on at the moment because it's the main season. Here, esoteric experience.
Wait a second. This is a weekly schedule. That's impressive.
Yeah, they're very busy in the summer months, and they offer some great activities for tourists in a part of Greece that is becoming more and more popular. And we actually saw the mountains, not these ones here, but part of the range that leads to these mountains. This peak here is the highest in the area where I'm based in southern Greece, and it's 2,500 meters nearly high. It's actually 2,407 meters high. That's why they've named themselves this. And it's within 10 kilometers of the sea. So it's a great location and thoroughly worth checking out. And down here, supplementary members, there's me, consultant, and Natalie Dolovieux, who is a researcher and an academic.
Chris, who are your common members? You are just sort of.
Yeah, the common members, they will be added to the website in the next week or so, as will the Greek version of this website. But we have currently around 25 members who are also hotel owners, consultants, ecotourism enthusiasts. You can join as an individual as well. And we're always on the lookout for new members, and we're really going to start pushing that as of this week when we start releasing press releases. And pardon?
Your aims and strategy? What are your aims?
Here. These are the goals.
Oh, okay.
You see that? We want to work together with local government and national government to start promoting ecotourism and Greece as an ecotourism destination, because so far this hasn't been done, and it's really something that is lacking in Greece at the moment. There are individual initiatives, but people have not come together to form a society like this yet, which is surprising. And that's what we're doing now.
And after this, I'll shut up and let somebody else talk.
Yeah.
How do you define ecotourism?
Well, our
Do
society.
you define ecotourism?
I think that our society we haven't put a definition up as yet, but we would take the TIES definition, the current TIES definition that was recently defined earlier this year. Let's get it up here.
Oh, one second. Do you consider that there's ecotourism in cities?
No.
Okay.
I don't know what the other people think, but because of this, it's ecotourism.org. Because of the requirement for natural areas, and I don't think that perhaps on the fringes of a city you could find natural areas, but within a city, I think it's difficult. Let's see the definition.
They might disagree with you in the bird watching tours in Soweto, outside Johannesburg.
Well, tell me more about that. Is it outside or is it actually inside the?
Soweto is almost a city of its own, but it's under the administrative area of Johannesburg, which is the biggest city in South Africa. I don't know what the populations are, but Soweto was started as the southwestern townships. It was an apartheid era. There were forced removals. Black people were made to move into the area of Soweto, and it's subsequently grown up to become a really vibrant community of its own. But a couple of years ago, when I was at our Tourism in Durban, which is our biggest tourism showcase, I met a young guy who really impressed me. Name's gone completely out of my head. But he does tours in natural reclaimed swampland as well as in other environments. In that what was once purely a slum, which has now become really a city of its own. I mean, there's still very large areas which are slum areas, but there are also very large areas wealth, relative wealth, and even I think great wealth. Although I must admit it's been a couple of years since I've been there, but they have big malls and that sort of thing. So that it's right across the board. But I think he would argue that he offers an ecotourism experience. I have problems with the idea of ecotourism, and I think it's interesting to see a new ecotourism society emerging, because besides ties, it seemed to me, from what I've been seeing from the outside, that the concept has been going to the south of its being replaced by things like responsible travel and environmental travel. Interesting to see people still working in it, and how you're what's the word, interpreting it.
Yeah, the reason that we chose that name in Greek and in English was because we believe as a society that we all know that there are several different definitions out there at the moment: responsible travel, green travel, all of these different things, and it's confusing, and it's difficult to have in an ideal world it should be just called tourism, because all tourism should be like this: responsible and support your local communities, etc. But we decided to use that term ecotourism because it's a recognized term. No matter whether you say it's a good thing or not, it is recognized. And when people search on the internet, if we were looking at the different amounts of hits, more people are looking for that word ecotourism. And that's why we've decided to go with that name.
Okay, interesting.
Because we think that we can make the most impact using it.
Oh. And
go ahead, Mark.
Will you offer? I did say I would stop asking questions. Are you going to be offering bookings and that sort of thing through your site?
That's something that we have to think about, but at the moment, no. The idea is more to have a platform where people can advertise, and then people could and be as a member, be visible on that site, so that people can see who is a member, and be able to go onto the individual sites from the Greek Ecotourism Society site.
It's interesting that all three of your guests tonight, Chris, are running in a certain way with communities, because Cape, although Chauvin, yours is more formal and yours is very formal, Chris, than mine, but we are all working to try and create a community in an area. Chauvin, do you do bookings through your site? Because my site will stand and fall on its bookings.
We facilitate some booking. There is a small bit of legislation here which means that once you put a package together with more than 2 paid elements and you are in control of putting that package together, then you are legally responsible if anything goes wrong, and that puts our businesses off taking on the liability of organising packages. But certainly, I mean, I think I think businesses have to work together because tourists look for connected experiences, don't they? So you can say, here's a really fantastic restaurant where you can have a really fantastic lunch. But if they're 500 miles away when they're reading on Facebook about that fantastic lunch, they're not going to come to your part of the world purely for that lunch. They're going to come for that and the great castle, the wonderful coastal walk, the sailing tour, the heritage monuments, and all of that. So I think I think that's what's helped. Talking in that way has helped us to persuade businesses to cooperate and to start telling stories in the first place, and then putting products together secondly that connect what's on offer here and make it accessible to somebody who doesn't know us yet or only knows a little bit about us. I think communities are important in the kind of work we're doing because we work in a very rural, economically disadvantaged, very beautiful area, but economically disadvantaged area, where the people who work in tourism have a really, really varied set of skills that they bring to what they do. A lot of people come and choose to live in West Cork because there's a fantastic quality of life here. There's a lot of German, Dutch, English, Irish people from all over the world involved in delivering tourism here. But I would, and some of them would be absolutely engaged in international debates about responsible tourism, but there are other businesses who've inherited, who've walked into running small places and unconnected, very varied educational backgrounds and skills. Pulling them together and creating a community is a way of kind of raising the standard of what we have on offer here and helping our neighbours to run better, more successful businesses, and communicating better with the tourists who are, I think, attracted here much more successfully when we offer them a big picture. Interestingly, we're involved in something a bit like what Martin's doing, because you're talking about your coastal route, your kind of long coastal route, and here on the Sheep's Head, our area forms part of Ireland's Wild Atlantic Way, which is a 2,500 kilometre coastal driving route along Ireland's western seaboard. It's very much concentrated on being giving people responsible tourism experiences, and what we're doing in our little bit of it is kind of really trying to make the most out of pulling together and attaching ourselves to the kind of route that you're offering. So we're doing something that's somewhere between what Chris and Martin are doing, I think. The question, packaging is an issue, I think. It's an issue to try and get people, small businesses, to see the value of it. They tend to want to offer their own thing, and we're trying to persuade them to be more coordinated, with some success, but I think we've a long way to go.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do with Cape Coastal Route, by the way. Although I'm doing it on a commercial basis, I in the background, developing media, what are they called, newsletters and real world events where people meet up and that sort of thing, in order to try and get them packaging together.
Yes.
As to the problem of legislation, we don't. We have a much broader, but very, very much more. I don't know whether that's very much more is the right word, but very strong piece of legislation called the Consumer Protection Act, which makes everybody in the chain responsible in some way, and well, responsible, full stop. And I kind of get around that problem by saying, if people come onto my site to book an individual accommodation, they can do that directly through my site. But if they want to package or a tour, there are package and tour operators, retailers on the site, like Tours for South Africa, Brent and Blue Tours, that will offer those packages, and that will do the ground handling.
Yeah. One of the things that we do is we try and liaise between what we'd call the fit operators, the operators who deal with free independent travellers, the companies like Vagabond Tours, Specialist Tour Services in Ireland, that do packaging and are willing to take on that risk. So what we find is that our small businesses have not historically worked with those companies in the same way as our neighbours in Killarney or Dingle might have done. So I suppose while we're doing some small bits of packaging ourselves, we're also trying to help small businesses unconnected from the bigger tourist infrastructure to make contacts and get involved in bigger things. And we do have a huge amount of support from our National Tourism Board, which is Fáilte Ireland. They are really excellent in offering support. But I think, what we try and do is get down to the level of going to sit in somebody's kitchen and have a cup of tea with them and say, right, okay, do you know what you could do? And you know who you should talk to, and we can give you a bit of help with that. And I think that's,
But a favorite aid worker of all times. What's his name now? Italian guy. But he's come up with the concept of enterprise facilitation, where he does exactly that. Instead of putting money into a community, he comes in and he says, what do you want, and how can we help you get it by putting you in touch with the right people? Ernesto Cerrone.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about tourism, and I think we touched on this the last time we spoke, Ron, it's supposed to be about connecting people, and it's the most disconnected industry in the world. I mean, the airlines don't know how to connect with the B&Bs. The B&Bs don't know how to even connect with the restaurants. The restaurants don't know how to connect with the car hire, and that's the big thing that's missing in tourism. I think that's where tourism is falling down, and why instituting responsible travel is so difficult. Because responsible travel is about connections and obviously responsibility, but it's a disconnected and fractured sector. It's not even an industry; it's a sector.
Well, 1 second. Let me throw out two ideas though. One, I love the idea going back to what Chris is doing with the Ecotourism Society in Greece. Chris, how do you say how do you say that in Greek?
You've got me. Elleniki Iteria Ecotourismou, it's called.
So, sorry for putting you on the spot there. But what's interesting, when you take that 20-year view of this sector and of these sectors, we could say, it's been interesting for me. Planeta started in 1994 and 1995. 1995, about 10 years ago, we were one of the first 1,000 websites. And what I found in this time was, watching the rise and fall of so many ecotourism societies. There was an ecotourism society in Honduras or in Ecuador, and they're long gone. As Martin says, the whole idea of people Googling or searching for ecotourism specifically has declined precipitously in the past 10 years. That said, it's a term I love, and it's a way that I certainly see a way of connecting environmental conservation and communities. But back in the late 90s, Harold Goodwin and others were noticing that a lot of the ecotourism were basically very expensive resorts owned by foreigners that were abutting a natural park or a reserve, but really didn't provide any connection to the community or to a city. And that's why, as I say, I play both sides of the fence here. That in the early 2000s, I think we had the Urban Ecotourism Conference, and I'm a strong believer that yes, cities play a strong role in ecotourism, but we'll create these words to divide ourselves. No, I don't believe in sustainable tourism, or I don't like responsible tourism, or whatever. If we focus on place and we focus on communities, I think we have a chance for success. That said, I applaud Chris's efforts and the Ecotourism Society, and would love to see what happens with it. How do we defragment these operations? And my last suggestion here is, I just want to see good examples. I want to see I want to see the B&B that has the list of the local restaurants, or I want to see the hotel that has the information about the local markets. I want to see these things that connect people and show people about the natural world, that show people about the cultural world. And I think all of you are doing that.
Well, I think genuinely responsible tourism begins from the ground up. So here on the Sheep's Head Way, in the late 80s and early 90s, people came up with the idea. A couple of men in a pub came up with the idea of allowing walkers to walk along the entire coastline of the Sheep's Head Peninsula, from Bantry, I know you have a Bantry over there in South Africa too, but our Bantry, and to walk along the coast of the peninsula and back. And they spent the next couple of years working with 100 landowners, getting individual permissions to create Ireland's premier coastal walking route. And it's still managed by 100 farmers, it still runs on that basis. But it became really groundbreaking, and other places came to see how it was done, and it was repeated in different ways elsewhere. in Ireland, there's a new Centre for Responsible Tourism that runs a conference every year. It had its second year this year and started an awards scheme. And as somebody who is promoting responsible tourism on the ground and eco tours and things like that, it's just been incredibly positive to spend an entire day with the converted. There are lots of people converted here on the ground, but to go and see new ideas and different ways of implementing things, and to talk with people who have also done research on what's going on overseas has been incredibly useful. So I do think, that there's, while responsible tourism always comes properly from the ground up, there is value in having those connected systems and organisations, because we all need to step back sometimes from our own patch and be energised and challenged by what we see going on, either within our own countries or states, or across the European Union, or we work, for example, we're a European destination of excellence, so we connected in that way with places throughout Europe, but also globally, like as we're doing today, sharing ideas and bouncing ideas off each other.
Beautiful.
Ron, you were asking about the guest house that has the list of restaurants. And Siobhan, we've got let me just go through this as I answer those two questions as I go. Sorry, the dog's just sat on the cat. The cat's very unhappy. The David Hotel in Ireland is a 3-star tourism grading council of hotels. So it's a brief introduction, and then obviously there's the online booking, as I expected. Now, here's what I wanted to get at. The attractions, to me, it's very important to make people aware of what you can do within the area, why you should stay in an accommodation, because I always think people's reason for staying in accommodation is always, the choice of accommodation is always the second reason for making a trip. The first is the things that they can do. Now, cycling and mountain biking is something that, this is where I wanted to mention something to you, Siobhan. It's becoming the biggest growing sport in our country, and I think it's much the same around the world. And our Provincial Minister of Economic Opportunities, Alan Winde, Alan Winde has proposed and is now working on a project to build a 500 and something kilometer cycling way between Cape Town and Plettenberg Bay, which is the town 30 kilometers to the east of where I live in Knysna. Chainstay is a website that I'm aligned to, which you can get 1 or 2 or 3 star Chainstay grading depending on what kind of facilities you offer. Do you have a place where people can lock their bikes? Do you do overnight washing of clothes? Do you have a washing bay for the bikes? Are you close to an accommodation, to a bike store, and that sort of thing? And that way it's a self-graded thing. Yeah, and then I'm providing information about dining, accommodation, and then finally the map. And I think this is the way that you need to go, because I'm hoping you'll give me some criticism of what I've shown you. Because I think that's the way people look for information. I'm hoping you'll disagree with me.
Well, we try to get the individual businesses to share information on their own websites, but we also pull together and see if I can share now.
Yeah, we see it.
Oops, I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to.
Just go to the other window, or.
Aha. Okay.
There we are.
We here it comes. The livingthesheepsheadway.com website. What we do is like that. When you're looking for somewhere to stay, let's say if you're going to look at a B&B or self-catering accommodation, here's just galore more B&B here. We try and put as much information in as we possibly can. So, for example, things about what's wheelchair accessible, whether restaurants cater for dietary requirements, what's on offer in the same place as them. So you've got you can look at cycling, for example, and you've got the details of the accommodation here. So we kind of provided a kind of a destination hub website, and then we're encouraging the individual businesses to take information from there and reuse it, on their own sites. The whole question, I think, one of the things about the internet is it once allows us to share information with people and make connections that weren't easy to make before, but it also allows tourism providers to over-rely on tourists being able to make their own connections. So we think, oh well, the tourist will be able to see that if you go to Cycle West Cork and go cycling there, that one of the great places to stay while they're passing through the Sheep's Head would be the Maritime Hotel or Gugambara Hotel. So I think we do need to do more to provide connected information in a way that might be linked to technologies like and ideas like user experience management on websites. I think we need to probably be a bit more connected with that. But just in terms of making things visible and making connections visible, one of the things I wanted to show you is this, which is just something very simple that we did recently. It's the Irish Year of Design this year. So there's a huge emphasis on well-designed and well-made Irish things. And West Cork, where we live, is a national hub for craftspeople who travel from all over the world because the light here is wonderful, the scenery is inspiring, and there's a great community here. But we live in a very sparsely populated area, and you could drive through and not see or notice this crafts community that is so vibrant. And so one of the things we've done is to provide a little self-managed tour, a self-guided tour that people can do, that takes them to Helen Ennis's pottery, where they can watch her making those beautiful mugs that have the colours of the Atlantic Ocean in them, onto the forge down the road where Brian Cronin, who you can see there, is the third generation of his family working with iron. We've included the artists and the galleries and the creators, and we're trying to make visible what is there, but which is not always visible to people. And at the same time, one of the things we're trying to do is encourage responsible travel by getting people to stay for longer. So in our tour, we've included things like a visit to a gallery where there's an exhibition on at the moment, but also links to stone carving courses, shoemaking, felt making courses that we hope will bring people back and hold them for longer. So doing things like finding strands in what you provide already, pulling them together, making them visible, encouraging the businesses in this list to come together, meet each other, decide how they'd like to work together and develop stuff is important too. One of the things we do too, a bit like what Chris is doing, is we have a calendar on our website which brings together every single thing that is happening in the local area. So from yoga courses to food and culture tours, it's all there. And when you bring everybody's individual things together, you make what's on offer in terms of tourism more palpable, more accessible to the tourists. So how we do that, I think we've still got a long way to go in understanding how to organise information best for tourists, between destination websites and individual websites. I think we've probably got a lot to learn, and whether there is distinctive things that we can learn as responsible tourism providers, I'd be interested to know.
I have a question. Unusual, I know. When can you go back to that site and go onto one of the bed and breakfasts, or the one that you showed us? There was a B&B that you showed us just before you showed it.
Can you see that now?
Yeah. How do you pronounce it? Gallenmore.
Gallenmore, yeah.
Now, the way you organize the information on that page,
yes.
Do you allow the guest house to load up its own information, or how do you do it?
I do it, which involved a huge amount of work at the beginning. But what we wanted was a consistency of tone. I suppose one of the things we've tried to do is find a way of talking about the Sheep's Head Way walking route what it has to offer, the characteristics of it, that we then that are key to that brand. And while we have, I would say, like different strands of holiday home and B&B, Glomore, for example, would be a luxury boutique B&B with homemade jams and lots of local food, and lots of family-friendly places too. What we wanted to ensure was that there was a tone struck in the description of the place and its characteristics and the kind of people it attracts that was consistent. So while it took a lot of work and there was some opposition to it, we opted to go that way.
I agree with you. I have organized my information differently to you, but I also do it myself. I charge for the building of the page.
Yeah.
I charge for 2 hours work, and I've had no resistance to that. Everybody's happy to let me to pay me to do that. I send them a questionnaire, they fill it out as well as they can, and then I complete it and put the page up. And minor changes to the page I'll do myself. The bookings and that sort of thing are pulled in through a third-party site called Knightsbridge. So that sort of stuff it's all automatically uploaded, and that does so that I don't have to worry about the bookings. But I think the organization of the information and the tone with which you present the information should be consistent across the site. Yes. What the next move for us is going to be is I'm going to start in the next 2 or 3 months. I'm going to start putting up functionality for reviews, and apparently I'm going to knock TripAdvisor off its perch.
Fair play to you.
You have to tell it down like that.
Reviews is an important thing, I think, on a site like reviews are important on sites like ours. But I think that we need to, this is something that I'm investigating with my webmaster. We need to be very, very careful to make sure that there are no anonymous reviews. I think anonymous reviews are the biggest problem on the review sites. But I think small sites like ours need reviews because peer review is. I mean, we don't want them to go to TripAdvisor. We want them to stay on our sites to look at whether they want to stay at that particular, on that island or at that, on that part of your walking way or on my coast, and make their decisions while they're on our sites.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we include on our site is we include the link to the TripAdvisor reviews, but just today we had a business quietly behind the scenes saying, a review that was unreasonable, and the anonymous reviews are tricky. I do think it is worth businesses being on TripAdvisor, and oddly enough, it does, whilst the odd reviews and the contrary ones are easy enough to spot, I think it has been a bit of a wake-up call for businesses that relied on not people moving on and not complaining, being too polite to say anything. I do think it's given a bit of a wake-up call to the less responsible businesses that they really need to pay attention to how they treat people and how they operate.
Oh, I totally agree. I think there's a place for TripAdvisor. I just think I keep going back to the story of the Grand Baghdad Hotel, where they had 64 reviews before they realized TripAdvisor realized it was a film. Not a hotel. That's because they're not doing. The
Grand Bucharest Hotel. Or Budapest, not Baghdad.
A different holiday experience.
Yeah.
But the most negative reviews on a site are normally the anonymous ones, and fortunately the users are beginning to understand that they need to sift through it. And take a more sort of nuanced look. But I think on sites like ours, all three of us, review is important on our own site rather than relying on TripAdvisor. And one of the reasons I think that is because we are each of us a human being, or in Chris's case, a small group of human beings. Maybe in yours, Chauvin, I'm not sure. but we are more approachable than a big rolling mass of whatever it is that TripAdvisor is. And I think in order to give our sites credibility, but also to build a loyalty from our customers, which are not so much the advertisers as the travelers, that they start to understand that they can come to our site and get a better, because the review is always, I think, more real than the PR that you or I write. I don't even think that. I know that. I mean, I know that you.
Well, let me just insert something. What I've seen again over 20 years is the fact that a lot of people would like to be that one-stop shop, and there is no one-stop shop anymore, if there ever was. And we have to at least acknowledge that people are going to TripAdvisor, or they're going to Yelp, or they're going to Facebook, and the question is raising that digital literacy of the tour operators, of the restaurants, and saying, here's how we make it simple for you. Now, what you folks know is that, on the Planeta Wiki, you're invited to help edit pages. That said, there is a certain style that I prefer, and I'll try to basically herd cats into that style, and it works as well as herding cats. But that said, we're creating directory listings. We have to make sure that, one, that there is the ease of accessibility for the tour operator to be able to update information. Hey, we are closed on Tuesdays, or now we have this on the menu. At the same point, saying that is a world different than really getting the people up to speed on doing that editing themselves. And this has gone on for 20 years. So I guess if I leave you with anything, the point I would make is that we need to have those face-to-face meetings, those on-the-ground meetings, in which people learn how to edit, learn how to do these things across the social web. So that people learn how that you don't have to like TripAdvisor, but do you know how it works? Do you know how to respond? You don't have to like Facebook, but again, do you see how it works? You don't have to like the Planeta Wiki, but again, do you see how you make that edit? Do you see? And again, I'll say this and I'll shut up. But when I say things, and you have to say this in this crappy English, do you know how to embed a widget on the wiki? It makes no sense to most people. But that's the language we have today. I think I think, Ron, that I really sometimes think we're chasing our tails by trying to make everybody digitally literate right across the board. There are those who will be able to make reviews. There are those who will be able to edit the wikis. There are those who will only be able to like things on Facebook, and those who will be able to blog. And I think with what the three of us are doing, Chris, Sharman, and myself, we are being communicators for our members, for want of a better word. And I think that we have to be sensitive to the fact that our members' main sort of reason for existing is to entertain visitors. The idea of communicating to many of them is foreign. So I think the value of the kind of sites that we're building, if you want to, a rural holiday in Greece, if you want a rural holiday in Ireland, if you want a rural holiday in South Africa, come to these particular sites. I think that's where the value is, because once a person's made a decision to go to a destination, that the value then becomes we are able to provide a more targeted thing of information, and we stick to a level of information. Sorry, Chris.
Can I just add that I think what you're doing, Siobhan, with that tour is great, and that's an example of something that can occur in Greece, in South Africa, wherever, working with businesses that would normally be averse to working together to develop something. Perhaps it's not the same in Ireland, but in Greece I know that it's more difficult to to get people together to work and say, hey, if we offer this package where we come together and they can go and see your shop and your workshop, and we can create an experience, a holiday experience out of that, that will likely attract more tourists to the area, and you're likely to benefit more, rather than just trying to sell yourself on your own website, if you even have one.
And I think when you do that, though, you have to be prepared for lots of businesses who would benefit to say, oh, no, thank you, and to work initially with the ones who would. So when I had an idea like this last year, when we started out, the first thing I did to try and get the community together was to run things like Facebook workshops and how to use TripAdvisor, because people thought, oh, I'm getting something for my money here, I'm getting something and I'll come along. And I used those meetings as a way to get people to ask those questions we were talking about much earlier. What do you want? What would you like tourism to be like here in 5 years' time? What kinds of visitors do you like best? So the whole message of living the Sheep's Head Way grew out of that. It was the idea that we enjoy living along the Sheep's Head Way. It is a kind of a way of life. Our visitors come here and think, I wish I had that way of life. So everything we do now is built around celebrating what we love about the place. And some of the people who came to those Facebook workshops still struggle to turn a computer on or came out of it just knowing how Facebook works and leaving it to their kids or grandkids after that. But quite a few of them do, have banded together and are starting to collaborate more. And I think what Chris was saying about, sometimes those networks can, that craft one is actually really at the beginning of itself. It's very, very informal. But I've found working with the food producers and the activity producers that if you keep working with the people who are most enthusiastic and building kind of little proto connections and proto products and proto trails and things like that, that they do solidify over time. And it's, there's, I think, what's good about that kind of trail is exactly what Chris has said. It's replicable in other places, but each time you replicate it, it will be distinct. And so we're not treading on each other's toes. The person who comes and has a wonderful time on Lonisos or wherever it is in Greece one year might think, do you know where, I'll go to a different part of Europe next year and try it, or I'll, and that they would have equally rewarding experiences, but they would be distinct. So we're competing, but in a healthy way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a little bit of a segue and ask all of you what's next. And to start that off, I'm going to show you what I'm working on. And with a big thanks to Jeremy Smith of a website called TravIndy, TravIndy.com. And next Monday, I'm focusing my attention on the second big tent pole event for Planeta called Indigenous Peoples Week. And this is our week-long dialogue about Indigenous travel and tourism services. And this, we're looking at a website called TravIndy, the essential tourism news site. And again, many, many thanks to Jeremy. Terrific news and reviews and all sorts of good stuff. But Indigenous Tourism Week is now in its 5th year and hosted by good friends, Time Unlimited in New Zealand, the Travel Word, Ethan Gelber, and Nuti Sami Sita in Sweden. And that, again, is August 3rd to the 9th. What's happening for you folks? What's next?
Supper.
Short term.
In Greece, I can say that our main priority now is to focus on getting the message out there, letting people know what we're doing, the networks, and getting the Greek website online, which is currently underway, and getting a logo, which is also being developed this week. So hopefully that will all be online by next Monday.
Beautiful.
We'll see.
We're working a lot on those kind of products and tours. I'm just working with a company called Culture Kitchen Tours at the minute. It's grown out of a small but brilliant local deli that serves lots of local cheeses, and its owner has always had a fantastic knowledge of the area. And now they're giving little coach and bus tours taking you to meet the cheese producers, the chocolate producers, the mussel people who produce the Bantry Bay mussels and so on. So, but with them, what we're trying to do is to build trade in the off-season and shoulder periods. For us, that's crucial. It's a small area that often runs at capacity although seeming very quiet, it runs at the capacity for restaurants and so on in July and August. And we really need to develop May and June and September and October so that, and to produce longer stays. One of the ways we're doing that is building up things like education-based tours. There's some wonderful cookery courses that run here and sailing courses that run in the autumn, and we really need to build those up. We're also collaborating with the 7 inhabited West Cork islands, and so we're collaborating with them. I also work with them independently at this project, and building alliances, strategic alliances locally and nationally and internationally is a way for us to kind of make our position kind of more solid going forward. And also we have to, because we're a tourism co-op, we have to spend some of the next couple of months re-recruiting people and persuading them that it's worth hanging on in there with what we're doing.
Fantastic.
I have some ideas for you, Siobhan. We can talk after for a few seconds.
Yes, yeah, that would be great.
In Ireland, yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, I would like to wind down our hour-long chat. Any final words?
Can I just share a screen, because I promised the viewers that I would show this thing in Athens where we had the General Assembly, just for 1 second.
Please.
Because it would be a shame not to. Let me see. Where are we? No.
See, Martin, this is our digital literacy workshop.
Yeah. Here we go. Right. Can you see it?
Oh yes, yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
This is called Impact of Athens, and this is where we had the General Assembly for the Greek Ecotourism Society. It's worth checking out. I've added the URL to the Hangout page. It's in Greek and English, and it's interesting to see what's going on in Athens to try and make
fantastic. Yes,
a positive impact.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, stop. Okay.
And I would just say, with Chris, really, we're obviously, Ireland has been dealing with some fairly tough economic times as well. And I think it can make people very defensive about their businesses. It can make people go inside their businesses and batten down the hatches, and it makes it quite difficult to persuade people to collaborate. And I think by sharing examples of responsible tourism across kind of national borders, we can show that in other areas where people have been struggling, responsible travel, encouraging responsible tourism is one of the ways to get economic success back into areas that are having issues.
Yeah, that's what we think as well.
It's finding that balance. I've just gone on to TravIndy, and I see in the latest insights on the right-hand column, overbooked, the revolt against tourism. That responsible travel, that is responsible travel's job, is to find that balance. But how do we stop the juggernaut that's government, which just wants hundreds and hundreds of millions and thousands of visitors because it makes them look good? And that's our challenge.
In Ireland, actually, that's what we've had that positive response, because there is a kind of a tourist triangle where people come into Dublin and then they do the Cliffs of Moher and they do maybe Dingle and then they come back up to maybe Bunratty Castle and then they go back again. And the government challenged the national tourism body to come up with an idea of scale and singularity, which is a great phrase, that would take people to the West Coast and spread the tourists out. Somebody was saying to me earlier today that 13 cruise ships arrived, or 13,000 tourists arrived in Dublin on cruise ships today, and they all want to go to the Guinness Storehouse. So, at that point, mass tourism fails, and getting more places to do well within the same country, within the same kind of tax area, makes sense. It makes sense to persuade people to travel along Martin's Trail, or to visit the islands that are less busy, or to visit the parts of West Cork that aren't as well known as Kinsale, for example. And so, yeah, I think we could be doing. I think there's a positive example of a state's attempt to come up with an intelligent solution to more numbers without bad tourism.
Well done. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for your time and attending today. This has been a sterling conversation and a great hangout. For viewers who are watching, please, if you have comments or questions, please post them on the Google event page or the YouTube video. We have quite a few links already there. I'll be updating the show notes, and we'll continue these hangouts. We'll be continuing these hangouts. So everybody stay online, and thank you again for participating.
Thanks, Ron. Thank you.
Thanks.